It started with a single text message on New Year's Eve, 2025. Everyone in the city received it simultaneously at 11:59 p.m. Happy New Year. Enjoy it while it lasts. Most people dismissed it as a harmless prank, though a few found it unsettling. Claire Reynolds, a 28-year-old journalist, was among the latter. She had spent the past year chasing strange, unexplained occurrences around the globe, bizarre weather patterns, mass disappearances, and an eerie hum reported from the depths of the earth. Something about this message felt connected, but she couldn't quite explain why. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Claire joined her friends on a rooftop party overlooking Sycamore Heights, the city skyline alight with anticipation. The crowd below roared in excitement, counting down the seconds. Champagne flowed freely, laughter echoed, and for a brief moment, Claire let herself believe the unease was all in her head. Then, the countdown reached its end. Instead of fireworks, darkness consumed the city, every light extinguished in an instant, plunging Sycamore Heights into a silence so profound it seemed unnatural. Claire's heart thudded as she looked around, her eyes adjusting to the dim glow of a moonless sky. Her phone vibrated. A second message appeared. Look at the sky. She obeyed, and her breath hitched. The stars were gone. In their place, a swirling, pulsating vortex of black and crimson stretched across the heavens, an impossible tear in reality itself. It moved as if alive, throbbing with a heartbeat that Claire could feel in her chest. Around her, the rooftop party dissolved into chaos. People screamed, stumbled, and pointed in terror. Below, the city erupted into a cacophony of car alarms, shattering glass and frantic cries. Then came the voices. They started as faint whispers, a low, guttural murmur that seemed to rise from the ground itself. The voices spoke no language Claire recognized, yet the words filled her with a primal fear. She clamped her hands over her ears, but the whispers grew louder, digging into her skull like claws. Others on the rooftop did the same, collapsing to their knees as the invisible words burrowed into their minds. The city's power flickered back on at 12:15 a.m. Every screen, phones, televisions, and digital billboards displayed the same image. A figure cloaked in shadows, its face obscured by a pulsating void. Its voice was a distorted growl, echoing as though it spoke from the depths of a cavern. You have lived too long in ignorance, blind to the horrors beneath your feet. Tonight, your world ends. Prepare to meet your makers. As the message repeated, the ground trembled violently. Claire stumbled to the edge of the rooftop and gasped. The streets below were splitting apart, jagged cracks spreading like veins. From the fissures emerged twisted, grotesque creatures, horrors that defied description. Their forms writhed and shifted, as if reality itself rejected their presence. They had too many limbs, too many eyes, and mouths that opened far wider than they should. The creatures moved with terrifying speed, dragging screaming victims into the fissures. Claire watched as entire buildings crumbled, swallowed by the earth. She turned away, trembling, only to find one of the creatures scaling the side of the building, its many eyes fixed on her. She backed away, heart racing, but the creature reached the rooftop in seconds. It loomed over her, its gaping maw dripping with a black, viscous substance. Just as it lunged, a deafening roar echoed through the sky. The vortex above began to pulse faster, casting a blood-red glow over the city. The whispers returned, now a deafening chant that shook the air. Claire dropped to the ground, clutching her head as the words became clear. The gate is open. The old ones return. The creature froze, its many eyes widening in fear. It screeched and retreated, vanishing into the darkness as the vortex above expanded, consuming more of the sky. Claire could barely think, barely breathe. She crawled toward the rooftop's edge, her vision blurring. Below, the city was unrecognizable, a sea of destruction and chaos. Then, the chanting stopped. Silence fell once more, heavy and suffocating. Claire looked up and saw them. Towering silhouettes descending from the vortex. Their forms were colossal, stretching higher than skyscrapers, their shapes barely comprehensible to the human mind. They radiated a power that made her chest tighten, as though the very air rebelled against their existence. One of the beings turned its gaze toward her. Though it had no eyes, Claire felt its attention like a physical weight, her mind filled with images. Worlds consumed, civilizations erased, and the horrifying realization that humanity was nothing more than a fleeting speck in the vast, indifferent cosmos. As the being raised a massive, clawed appendage, Claire closed her eyes, bracing for the end. But it didn't come. Instead, she awoke hours later, lying in the middle of the street. The city was eerily quiet. The sky was clear, the vortex gone, and the creatures had vanished. Around her were others, dazed and bloodied, but alive. Claire's phone buzzed one last time. Hands shaking, she picked it up and read the message. Welcome to the new world. She looked around, realizing with growing dread that the city wasn't the same. Buildings stood at impossible angles. Shadows moved independently of the light, and the air buzzed with an unnatural energy. Whatever had come through the vortex hadn't left. The world hadn't ended. It had been remade, and humanity was no longer alone. The spire's destruction left the survivors gasping for air, their victory fleeting. As the echoes of the explosion faded, Dr. Carter's voice broke through the silence. "We've disrupted this gate," she said, her face pale. "But there are more. They'll keep coming." Claire leaned against the cavern wall, wiping blood from her forehead. The others were shaken but alive, except for the burly man who had been dragged into the shadows. "Where do we go now?" Claire asked, her voice trembling but resolute. Carter pointed toward a faintly glowing exit at the far end of the chamber. "There's a resistance forming in the mountains. They have weapons, things that might actually hurt these creatures. If we can get to them, we stand a chance." The teenager with the backpack, still clutching his lighter, nodded. "We can't stay here. Those things will regroup." The group moved quickly, climbing through the ruined subway tunnels and emerging into the ravaged city above. The landscape was unrecognizable. Entire buildings had been warped into grotesque shapes, and the sky was fractured, as if reality itself were splintering. As they pressed on, the shadows seemed to grow more aggressive, whispering Claire's name in low, guttural tones. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her, something far worse than the creatures they had faced so far. By nightfall, they reached the outskirts of the city, where the twisted skyscrapers gave way to dense forests. The air was cooler, but the oppressive hum of the spires still lingered in the distance. "We'll rest here," Carter said, motioning to a small clearing. As the group settled, Claire approached Carter. "Do you really think this resistance can stop them?" Carter hesitated before replying. "I think it's our best chance. But the old ones, they're not just creatures. They're forces of nature, tied to dimensions we can't fully comprehend. Destroying the gates might only delay the inevitable." Claire's stomach twisted. "So what's the point?" "The point is to fight," Carter said firmly. "To give humanity a chance to adapt, to survive. We can't let them win without trying." Before Claire could respond, a distant roar shattered the stillness. The creatures were hunting again. "We need to keep moving," Carter said. "If we can reach the mountains by dawn, we might have a shot." As the group packed up, Claire glanced at the horizon. The fractured sky seemed to ripple, as if something massive was stirring beyond the veil of reality. She tightened her grip on her weapon and took a deep breath. The old ones were coming, but she wasn't ready to give up. Not yet.